Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and we've got our three expert panelists here today to answer your questions and tell you a little bit about what's going on at home in their, well, not gardens, I guess. It's cold outside, but in their neck of the woods. We'll start there. So first, we'll have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their specialty. So John, we'll start with you.
Hey, I'm John Bodensteiner. I'm a Vermilion County Master Gardener. I live out in the country near Bismarck, Illinois, and I enjoy just about anything. And I if it grows outside or inside, I like it.
Okay, a generalist. All right,
Yeah.
Ella.
I'm Ella Maxwell. I'm a horticulturist at Hare Nursery. I'm also a Tazewell County Master Gardener. And I also have a large yard like John. I like things that grow, trees and shrubs and perennials.
Wonderful. And Marty.
Hi, I'm Marty Alagna. I'm a retired landscaper with not nearly the knowledge the other two panelists have today. So there you go.
Practical experience and knowledge. There's a
That's
marriage.
right, yes,
There's a
yes,
marriage in there, right?
I have the seat of the pants experience. So,
There you go.
earn while you learn. I did that a lot.
There you go. Okay, so we've got some show and tells. All of you brought fun things to share. So John, we'll start with you. And we're talking about prepping for next year already, right?
Right, because I'm getting all kinds of catalogs. And if I like ordering locally or going to the stores and buying my tomatoes locally, but there's certain things that you just can't find. One of the things I found last year that I ordered from, this is Baker Seed, and I think you can probably see that. But I ordered Japanese dandelions. They're pink in flower. So it was just kind of unique. So, certain catalogs have very unique ideas. So this is one of those that I really like. But I want to
You're
really.
so weird, John. You're just so weird. Only you work dandelion seeds. Oh my gosh.
So what I wanted to, we're all getting these catalogs, and especially tomatoes. Tomatoes is probably the #1 growing vegetable in the United States and locally too. And there's a lot of new types of tomato seed varieties that are available, and a lot of people see the name, and then there's a bunch of letters behind it, and they question what they just don't know what those letters or don't take them into account. But they are telling you that plant or those seeds are resistant to that disease. And one of them, like V is for verticillium, F is for fusarium wilt, and N is for nematode, T is for tobacco mosaic virus, A is for alterna stem canker, ST is for stemphilium green leaf spot, TSWV is for tomato spotted wilt virus, EB is for early blight, which is a new one, LB is a late blight. And those are both fairly new, which I have had a problem with lately. And then TYK is tomato yellow leaf curl vine. Now, one of the problems, if you go to the local stores and you buy your tomato seeds, if you look on the back, they will not say what those diseases are. And like just this one, Best Boy. Well, it says very resistant, disease resistant, but it doesn't say to what. Well, I looked up what it is resistant to, and it's just verticillium and fusarium and nematodes, just those three. So if you didn't have an access to that information, you wouldn't know. So I said, do your research because it's so important. There's a couple of new ones, like I said, with that early blight and late blight, which has really been hitting central Illinois lately. But one of the, getting back to, just not going into the seeds, but it's very important that you pick your site very carefully and that you rotate that site. And you need to if you have a certain disease, buy a resistant variety to that disease. Make sure that it's in a sunny spot. clean up. Right now, we should all be out there. We should have done it already, really, for as cold as it's going to get. But we should be out there, especially if you had a disease. You should have cleaned up all those old tomato plants, all the leaves, all the debris, and taken it away, especially if you had the disease. And then next spring, after you plant the tomatoes, you need to cover that with either paper or ground cloth, and then mulch it so that when it rains, it doesn't hit the soil, because some of these diseases are in the soil and they'll splash up, hit those bottom leaves, and then slowly spread up. Another thing a lot of people get is blossom end rot. They need to learn to water or get a system where they're watering consistently. Heirloom and hybrid, what's the difference? The heirloom to me is like one of these that is not going to have letters behind it, because back then they didn't have disease resistant. The hybrids have been made to be resistant to the disease that, you know, they're specializing in. Some of them have got a whole litany of Indeterminate and Determinate. What's the difference between that? One is going to grow continually, and Determinate is if you're going to can a whole bunch and you want to do it all at once. You know, you're going to see some that have that looks like a potato leaf. You say, "What? That's not a tomato." Yes, it is. It's in the brandy wine, and it's an old German heirloom, and it's probably one of my favorite because it's so tasty. And then we can do certain things like grafting. They've got rootstocks in some of these catalogs. You can find resistant, disease-resistant rootstock, and what you do is there's two types of grafting. You can do a side-by-side where you take two plants, you kind of scar them both, kind of clip them together, and then after they've that grafting has taken place, you cut the one off at the root, and you cut the other one at the top, and that way you get the resistance, the disease resistance of this root, and you get the yumminess from the top.
So John, I have to jump in and ask. We had an email come in from someone, Manuel, specifically asked for Chuck, because we all know Chuck is famous and has more fans than we all could imagine. But they want to know what everyone's favorite type is and what you plan to grow. So if you guys have any favorites, Ella, do you have a favorite tomato type?
Yeah, I have, we like the orange tomatoes. They're lower in acid. They're very flavorful. There's a burpy one called Orange Wellington that we like. We also like a lot of the cherry tomatoes because they're early, they're very fruitful, and they're very versatile. I mean, they're not great on a hamburger, but you can use them every place else.
Okay. Marty, what's your favorite type?
Oh, Golden Jubilee. I love Golden Jubilees. And I also want to grow yellow pear every year. I also like the variety Delicious. Delicious is a red. I like big tomatoes. My upbringing consisted of the neighbors and the family. We all gardened, everybody gardened. So it was who got theirs in first, whose tomatoes blossomed first, who set fruit first, and who got the biggest one. I have a picture of my dad. He got a tomato that was like as big as your head, you know, and he's got my sister and I both holding this, you know. We look like a picture out of the Burpee catalog. It's like, come here, you girls both get your hand on there and mother, take the picture, you know. So we're preserved for posterity with a tomato. So yeah, so I like big ones, you know. It's like little, I'm not interested in early, I'm interested in size and flavor. So I love it.
And just to make clear, there was one we grew this year. It was called Mrs. Maxwell. So I have
perfect.
Even better.
Perfect.
Even better.
John, you were going to say something?
Okay, the Delicious that Marty was just talking about, the Delicious holds the world record. Somebody grew it was over 7 pounds.
There you
Marty,
go.
was that your dad's? Does your dad hold the record?
No, I don't think so, but he would have loved to. Oh my gosh, he'd have lived on that.
But that is
he'd have carried
also
a picture of that tomato in his wallet with him.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I hope you can find that picture because we would love to see it. You can't mention it without showing it to us.
It's I'll have to hunt for that because I saw it not too long ago.
That is one of my favorites, but I like Sun Gold, Miracle Sweet, Kellogg, which is a large yellow tomato, of course, the Brandywine, and a new one that came out last year from Purdue is called Sparky, and it is a cherry, and it is prolific and very, very tasty. So look for that new one this year. I am ordering the seeds, so I will have quite a few plants at the greenhouse. But Sparky is one that's going to, I think, make a big impact on the growing.
Great. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Okay. Show and tells now. Ella, do you have something to share with us today, or do you want to do a question?
No, I've got show and tell today.
Okay.
I just wanted to share. There is something that my family knows that they could always get me, and it's my husband and I enjoy going to like the antique stores and things, and I collect Stuart Nye jewelry. It's a silversmith from Asheville, North Carolina, and it was started in 1933, and he was a silversmith, and they still have a studio. I've actually visited it. So I just have this huge collection of bracelets and pins and rings, and this is a dogwood blossom, but they do so many more things. I got a little pansy bracelet here.
They're all botanical.
Oh, they are. They're all botanical. Here's a trillium. This is the Texas rose. Again, they did it during the war years. There was some shortages, and now they've also added brass. It's a less expensive, I guess, option. But there's even like little pine cones. I just love looking for these things, and I have them. Unfortunately, not really well displayed, but I'm going to. I'm going to make a shadow box with it. But I have necklaces and earrings and bracelets, and it's all because my aunt got a piece when she was visiting, and she passed that down to me as a young girl, and ever since I've loved it. So
it's a lifestyle. It's a total lifestyle.
Yep, you can find all kinds of things. I had talked to John earlier about his collection that he has there of mortar and pestles, and I just thought this would be something interesting to show because it's botanical and it's beautiful and it's wearable.
Now, was he the creator of this line of jewelry and pieces? Was he into gardening, or did he just sort of like the shapes of flowers and plants?
It was a depression decision on what he could do to support his family, I believe.
Gotcha.
So he was a silversmith, and so he started using the native plant material of his region there, Asheville, the dogwood, and everything is still handmade. I'm sure they,
That's neat.
Yeah, kind of fun.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely. All right. On to Miss Alagna. What have you got today?
Well, kids, I have some poinsettias. I love the variegation and the different possibilities you can have in poinsettias, and this one happens to be one of my favorites. It's pink and white. It's kind of a creamy pink and white and green, and it goes perfectly in my living room for Christmas because those are kind of the colors we have in there, roses and burgundies and cream and green. This one I just bought just recently, and it's a professionally grown poinsettia. It's been trimmed properly and fed properly and shaded properly, and so that's the Santa version of poinsettia.
So hold that image in your mind, right?
Yes. And now the Marty poinsettia. You can see it's a little bit spindlier. I've had this one for 2 years.
Wow.
It started out red. It does get like zero care and no pruning. So it's a little taller than the average poinsettia, as you can see.
Mhm.
you know, but what it lacks in fullness, it certainly makes up for in height. So this is the elf version, and this is the basketball player poinsettia. And then I have a third item. I have the Grinch poinsettia. So it's sad. It's sad. Now both of this one and the one before, I did over. I've had them for a couple of years, but like I said, they live in my living room.
Mhm.
You know, possibly not an ideal environment for poinsettias. Would it really be good for my poinsettia and yours, incidentally, if you want to overwinter them and try to do a poinsettia for next year yourself? So here's a couple of suggestions. Don't water them very much. They are remarkably drought tolerant, and you will drown them just like that. And then you'll be mad, and you'll say, "That dang Marty." So yeah, I often will slip this out of the pot, out of the liner, or I'll put it in a pot. It's in a pot and it's got holes in it, but sometimes I'll put a couple of layers of paper towel folded up underneath the pot itself, so it does not sit in water, because they really are. I remember my husband and I were fortunate enough to be able to go on a cruise years ago, and in 2002. It was right after 9/11, and it was affordable. So we're cheap and we could do it. And we went to the West Indies, and there was a tree in someone's yard, and I couldn't quite identify it. And I told Bill, "I know what that is. I know what that is." And it suddenly dawned on me. It's a poinsettia. It's a
Wow.
poinsettia you can sit under on a bench.
Wow.
In Illinois.
So how big was the one that you
so-
could sit under?
Oh gosh, it was 20 feet tall. It was a
Wow.
tree. It was like a dogwood tree. It was lovely.
Wow.
It wasn't blooming. It
Mhm.
wasn't the time of year that the leaves would color. So I just kept thinking, what is that? What is that? What is that? I think it was on St. Lucia or something. And it was amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a poinsettia. It was so neat. So don't overwater these.
Down in
When the
Mexico,
weather
they
gets
get
warm.
down in
Yeah.
Mexico, they get to the size of,
Go ahead,
in,
John. What were you
in
gonna say?
Central America, they get to be very, very large, and trunks up
Yeah.
to like that. And they're actually almost a weed down there, but they're
Yeah.
perennial. They are a perennial just here, that they are so tender that, and finicky
Yeah.
too.
Mhm.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, they are. Well, I would suggest, if you want to do these and try overwhelm, like I said, before it gets warm, and I mean warm, like tomato and pepper warm. It can't be cold at all. Light on the water, and then I would cut them back a little bit, and I'd set them outside in like under a shade tree or something like that. There's a whole lot more light outside in the shade than there ever will be inside your house. So keep trying to help them grow more, feed them, and
Mhm.
then start cutting their daylight in half.
Okay.
12 hours of darkness, 12 hours of light, and they should start to color up for you. And anybody who has anything else to add, jump right in.
Anybody?
So-
If not, I've got one for Ella. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Marty. We're going to go to Ella. This is question number 974, DJ. This is kind of an interesting one. I don't think I've ever had a question quite like this. Joanna Parrish writes in, we have a palm tree and a lemon tree that we have taken inside for the past few winters. However, they're too large to do this now. Is there any place around Decatur to store them safely for the winter? So we were kind of talking about this before this show, and Ella, you had some great suggestions. So help us out, or help Joanna out.
Well, Joanna, it is difficult when you've had these attachments to this plant material and they get too large for your home. And then what can you do with them? And I think for a lot of us, most of us don't really have room, and we're not sure where to check. But one place that I know that people have used is they've donated them to a nursing home, because usually they have large indoor spaces, usually more lighting, and maybe they would be interested. Also, you can check with any local school or college that, because again, they're going to be in session during the winter and maybe not during the summer. Maybe you can get them back. Now, I know my friend Jenny at Illinois Central College is always overwhelmed with requests, and they can't take care of everyone's plants. But again, you might be able to donate it and see. If not, with the citrus, there are ways of pruning it to make it smaller, to try to keep it over. However, with the palms, they really become too large, and you can check with John, but I don't think you can really propagate a palm.
I don't think so.
Just kind of start over.
Okay. That's a really great idea though, Ella, to ask, if you've got your kid's teacher or somewhere that you get church.
Well,
I mean, that's a really great idea.
Social media, I think you can probably find someone who wants to adopt it. Usually I have my friends over and it's like, do you want to take a plant home?
Yes. Yeah.
Take a plant. You need a plant.
Thank you so much.
There's a couple of high schools in this area, in the Champaign County area, that also have greenhouses. I don't know if they'd be interested in that or not, but I thought that was brilliant. I wouldn't have thought of that at all.
Yeah, I'm working at one of the high schools greenhouses, and somebody brought in a rubber tree. And what I'm doing on some of those that you can propagate, and if you want to do this at home, you can do this yourself. The U of I has wonderful webinars on YouTube on how to do air layering. And what you do is you get a clone of the mother plant, and you and then you air layer this. You get roots in it, and you plant it, and you have basically it's the same plant that you had. And then after you've got it established, then you can get rid of the mother plant, and you still have especially if it came from a funeral or somebody gave it to you, has some special family. I know Christmas cactuses, there some people have those that are 40, 50, 60 years old that are clones of from grandma or great grandma. And so, but air layering is one of those things that you can do on some things, but it has to have a stem. But go on the U of I webinar pages, and if you are interested in doing that, they have some wonderful how to do it, and they actually have videos on showing how to do it.
Okay. All right, John, we've got a couple minutes left, so let's try to get this question. This is from Frank Boland. Frank writes in, I have a red delicious apple tree that has some sort of fungus growing on the limbs. I noticed it in decline about 6 weeks ago, and there's fungus now. It's 7 years old and has not produced a single apple. There were finally blossoms this spring, but then we had a freeze that killed the blossoms, if everybody remembers that. I had every bed sheet in my house outside in the yard. Moving on. So no apples again this year. The tree had been healthy until midsummer. What should I do to control the fungus? And we've got some photos here. So what are your thoughts?
It looks like he has some mushrooms growing on it. Really, it's a fungus.
And that's a bad thing, right? That shows poor health.
It is a very bad thing, because if you look at the trunk, he has what we call canker, which is basically at that stage of the game, there's not too much you can do. Your best just to make a vertical cut at the ground and start over. And you'd want to be sure that you clean that area up really well, because sometimes some of that canker can hang around. And be very careful about notching or hitting the trunk with your mower, because all it takes is just a small snip into the bark, and then you've got your disease back. Also, if you're going to trim on that and then go trim on something else, make sure that you really clean your pruners between that tree and anything else. But as far as the mushrooms that are showing on that tree are just a secondary effect. That tree is basically dead. It may not know it yet, but it is. And the canker,
kind of a zombie tree.
the canker is what really is the problem there. And unfortunately, unless you catch it really early and cut it behind the canker and clean it up really well, there's not too much you can do. And this, by the looks of this one, I would say it's way past what is going to be survivable or.
Okay. Yeah, Marty, this is your wheelhouse. So what do you do once you get this tree out? What do you do to dispose of it properly? And we have a minute.
The tree?
Yes.
I burn
Once it's
it.
as the
I would burn
landscaping
it.
expert. So burn it. That's your okay.
I would. You get rid of it. You know, you can, I don't know if I'd even keep that for firewood, because if
No.
it's in the yard, then you've got that canker fungus in your lawn. It can blow around, it can move, it can make spores. I would just it's time for weenie roast.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, before we go, John, it's you did some harvesting today. Take us
Yes.
out with that. We've got about 30
Yeah.
seconds left.
I have.
Oh,
I
yeah,
have,
yeah.
I have a couple of kale plants and a ornamental cabbage, and I went and picked today, and I'm going to make some soup. I love making zuppa. It's a
Yes.
Yeah.
sausage, and this is the magic ingredient. And it hasn't been. If anybody has Brussels sprouts, I know Chuck Boyd said now's the time. He always said now's the time to go pick Brussels sprouts because they're the sweetest, the least, biting
bitter.
and everything like that.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Oh yeah, and
Guys.
the kale too. All those crucifers are so good right now. They're
Yes,
so
I love
sweet.
kale. A good zuppa. Ooh, that sounds delicious.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, guys,
It
thank
does.
you. We're out of
coming
time.
over,
and
John.
yes, now that we're all starving for zuppa. Thank you guys so much for your time and talents today. Thank you for watching. Thanks for hanging in there with us this year, the at-home edition, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.